2012, the United States had two diplomatic facilities in Libya, an embassy in Tripoli and a temporary mission facility in Benghazi. There were also two other facilities, known as annexes, operated by the CIA, one in Tripoli and one in Benghazi. The Benghazi mission is a compound consisting of four buildings: Buildings B, C, a tactical operations center, and a barracks. Building C was essentially a residence which contained an area within called a safe area, which was secured by a steel locking gate. Building B is another residence. The compound is large, about 300 yards long and 100 yards wide. The description of events in 2012, which follows, is based on unclassified reports only. Times are approximate Benghazi time. During the week of September 3rd, Sean Smith, an information management officer, arrives in Benghazi. On September 9th, an American diplomat in Benghazi meets with Islamist leaders of Libyan militia. He is told since Benghazi wasn't safe, it was best for Americans to leave Benghazi as soon as possible. The following day, on September 10th, Ambassador Stevens arrives in Benghazi with two security officers from Tripoli. In the afternoon, Ambassador Stevens visits the annex in Benghazi for a briefing. Later in the evening of September 10th, Stevens meets local Libyan officials for dinner at a local hotel. The next morning, September 11th, at 6:43, a contract security officer sees an unknown individual in a Libyan police uniform taking photos of the mission with a cell phone from the second floor of a building across the street. The incident is reported to the security officers and also to the annex. A letter is drafted to the Libyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Sometime later, Sean Smith posts a message online about the incident with a sense of foreboding about what may follow. Before noon, the person assigned temporarily as the principal officer to the mission leaves to return to his position in Tripoli as scheduled. Ambassador Stevens remains at the mission the entire day and holds meetings there. During the course of the day, Ambassador Stevens is informed of ongoing demonstrations and the breach of the U.S. Embassy in Cairo. The State Department's afternoon briefing in Washington discussed these developments in Egypt. At 7:40 p.m., upon concluding a meeting, Ambassador Stevens escorts a Turkish diplomat to the mission's main exit, where nothing extraordinary is noted. There are no protests. Between 8:10 and 8:30 p.m., a British security team drops off vehicles and equipment they had used in connection with a British diplomatic visit earlier that day. There is nothing extraordinary noted outside the mission when they depart. There are no protests. Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith retire to their quarters in Building C at 9 p.m. At 9:02 p.m., a Libyan police vehicle is stationed at the main gate. 9:42, the Libyan police vehicle departs as armed attackers advance toward the mission. The security officer in the Tactical Operations Center hears shots and an explosion. On security monitors, he sees dozens of armed individuals entering the mission compound through the main gate. He hits the alarm and warns others via his radio. Embassy Tripoli and Annex Benghazi are called and alerted by cell phone. At the same time, personnel at Annex Benghazi hears multiple explosions coming from the direction of the mission, and security officers immediately organize to depart while calls are being made to Libyans for support. 9:45, the embassy in Tripoli sets up a command center and notifies Washington. At about this time, a security officer enters Building C and moves Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith to the safe area of the building. Once in the safe area, the security officer gives Ambassador Stevens his cell phone and he begins to make calls to local contacts in the Embassy Tripoli requesting assistance. 9:50 to 10 p.m. Deputy Chief of Mission Gregory Hicks in Tripoli dials the number of a call he had earlier missed and reaches Ambassador Stevens, who tells him they are under attack, but their call then disconnects. Embassy Tripoli contacts the airport in Benghazi about logistical support and aircraft for possible extraction. Hicks contacts Washington and offices of the Libyan President and Prime Minister. He also calls Libyan Air Force and Armed Forces contacts. Between 9:45 and 10 p.m., attackers use fuel stored at the compound to ignite the barracks building. Vehicles are also torched. Then they move to Building C, where the safe area is located. Other attackers loot Building B and attempt to enter the Tactical Operations Center. The security officer in the Tactical Operations Center maintains contact with Embassy Tripoli, Annex Benghazi, and Washington, which now has live video feed since the initial alarm. After being unable to penetrate the gate to the safe area, the attackers set fire to Building C and leave. Shortly after 10 p.m., smoke from Building C is observed on the security monitors at the Tactical Operations Center. At 10:03 p.m., the security team leaves Annex Benghazi in 2 vehicles. No support from local contacts was obtained. On the way to the mission, the security teams from Annex Benghazi stop and elicit help from militia members but get none. There are reports, however, that an unknown number of February 17th Brigade members did join the Annex team. They proceed to the mission. 10:10 p.m. As smoke penetrates the safe area of Building C, the security officer with Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith leads them to a bathroom with a window. The window does not allow for egress, and after smoke fills the bathroom, the security officer attempts to lead them to a bedroom with the window allowing for egress. The security officer crawls to the window and escapes only to discover that Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith are not behind him. After re-entering the building multiple times to locate them, he is forced to climb a ladder to the roof and radios the Tactical Operations Center for assistance. Security officers from the Tactical Operations Center in Building B manage to reach Building C and rescue the security officer off the roof. They also repeatedly enter Building C, still smoke-filled, to search for Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith. At 10:10 p.m., about 25 minutes since the attack began, the Annex security team arrives at the mission. Some members of the security team retrieve the security officer from the Tactical Operations Center, and others go to Building C to join the search for Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith. This same time, an unarmed, remotely piloted Predator surveillance aircraft is diverted to Benghazi by the AFRICOM operations officer. 10:30. During the search of Building C, Sean Smith is found lifeless, apparently killed by smoke inhalation, and his body is removed from the building. 10:45 p.m. Greg Hicks asked the defense attaché if any support was coming and was told that the nearest help was in Aviano, Italy, and that it would take 2 to 3 hours to get on site and there were no tankers available to refuel aircraft. After repeated attempts to locate Ambassador Stevens in Building C, the decision was made to leave the mission due to the threat of it being overrun by the attackers. The security officers departed for the Annex in armored vehicles under hostile fire. They encountered individuals on the street who tried to divert them, but the Americans suspected a trap and continued toward the Annex. As they did so, they were fired upon. 2 tires were blown out of one vehicle, but the drivers were able to take evasive action and navigate around the crowds and vehicles. 11 o'clock. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta and Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey meet with President Obama at the White House at a previously scheduled briefing and discuss the attacks with him for about 15 to 30 minutes. 11:10. The Predator drone arrives over the mission. The drone detects a roadblock several blocks east of the mission. 11:30. All Americans except for Ambassador Stevens are now at the Annex. For about the next hour and a half, small arms and RPGs are fired sporadically at the Annex. Midnight. A 7-member security team consisting of 6 security personnel plus 1 interpreter from the Annex in Tripoli departs on a chartered aircraft from Tripoli for Benghazi. 12:07 a.m. The State Department's Operations Center sends an email to the White House, Pentagon, FBI, and other agencies that says Ansar al-Sharia has claimed credit for the attack on its Facebook and Twitter accounts. Attacks on the embassy of Tripoli are threatened. 12:17 a.m. Ambassador Susan Rice is emailed a message from a CNN reporter who reports that there are clashes between Ansar al-Sharia and security forces at the U.S. mission in Benghazi. 12:30 a.m. The State Department receives an update from Hicks. The Department of State now is aware that the body of Sean Smith has been recovered. The email reports that fighting has stopped. Ambassador Stevens remains missing, however. Between 12 midnight and 2 a.m., Panetta orders 2 Marine Fleet anti-terrorism security teams, fast platoons, to deploy from Rota, Spain. Plans are for 1 to go to Benghazi and 1 to go to Tripoli. Also between midnight and 2 a.m., Panetta orders 2 teams of Special Operations Forces to move to Sigonella, Italy for staging. One, the commanders in Extremist Force, or CIF, had been training in Croatia. The second one deploys from the United States. 1:15 a.m. The chartered plane carrying the security team from Annex Tripoli lands at Benghazi Airport. It has no transportation or security escorts, however. The team must remain at the airport to wait for assistance. 1:15 a.m. Local Libyans find Ambassador Stevens at the mission. He is reportedly alive but unresponsive. The Libyans take Stevens to the hospital. 2 a.m. Ambassador Stevens is declared deceased by asphyxiation after doctors at the hospital unsuccessfully attempt to resuscitate him for about 45 minutes. Also around 2 a.m., a phone call from the cell phone given to Ambassador Stevens at the onset of the attack is placed to Embassy Tripoli. A male Arab speaker reports someone matching Ambassador Stevens' description is at the hospital. Concerned it was a trap for Americans, a Libyan contact in Benghazi is sent to the hospital first. Sometime after 3 a.m., Gregory Hicks receives a call from a Libyan official and is informed that Ambassador Stevens is dead. At 4 o'clock, Secretary Clinton issues a written statement confirming the death of one official. 4:30, the security team from Tripoli leaves the airport for the Benghazi annex with members of the Libyan Shield militia providing transportation and an armed escort. 5:04, the security team from Tripoli arrives at the annex. 5:15, mortar rounds are fired at Annex Benghazi. Initial rounds fall long and short, but rounds eventually hit their targets and kill Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty. 2 others are seriously injured. The decision is made to evacuate the annex. 6:15 a.m. All personnel evacuate the annex with the help of heavily armed Libyan militia units. Americans at Annex coordinate with local Libyans to secure the body of Ambassador Stevens at the hospital and have it transported to the Benghazi airport. 7:30. A group of evacuees, including all wounded personnel, depart Benghazi on the chartered plane. 8:25. Ambassador Stevens' body is received by ambulance at the Benghazi airport and identified. 10 o'clock. All remaining Americans depart Benghazi for Tripoli on a Libyan Air Force C-130. 11:30. The Libyan C-130 evacuation flight lands at Tripoli Airport. 7:57 p.m. The Special Operations Force deployed from Croatia arrives in Sigonella, Italy. 8:56. A fast platoon ordered to Benghazi arrives in Tripoli. It had changed destinations after the evacuation of Benghazi had been effectuated. 9:15 p.m. Embassy Tripoli evacuees, Benghazi personnel, and those wounded from attacks depart Tripoli aboard 2 U.S. Air Force planes from Germany. 9:28 p.m. The Special Operations Forces deployed from the United States arrive in Sigonella. 10:30 p.m. The 2 U.S. Air Force planes arrive at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. The attacks on September 11th and September 12th killed 4 Americans: Christopher Stevens, Sean Smith, Glenn Doherty, and Tyrone Woods. Those who were injured are unknown. How many Libyans, if any, were injured or killed is unknown. None of those responsible for the attacks has been brought to justice.